See if it turns red.
Okay.
And the easement,
Big things are...
Good evening, everyone. Hello. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Tim Cummings. I'm the Director of Administrative Services. The time now is 6:01 p.m. on December 11th, 2023, and I'm asking that the Joint Committee on Infrastructure and Police Commissioners come to order. I'm going to give just a little background context as to why I'm up here facilitating the meeting. It is outlined in your packet, but essentially this is a body that gets constituted as necessary when you have a building project in hand, as we do this evening. With that being said, there's some customary governance type matters that we're going to need to take up this evening. So this evening's meeting is a little bit more organizational in nature, so we can have our affairs in order, so we can proceed with the building project as the Joint Committee sees fit. Before I proceed any further, I'm going to quickly just take a roll just to make sure we do have quorum. Alderman O'Brien?
Present.
Alderman Dowd, I believe, is joining us, but is going to run a little bit late. Alderman Cuomo is not here with us this evening. He had a prior commitment. Alderman Gouveia? Here. Alderman Jetty?
Here.
Commissioner Tolner?
Here.
Commissioner Dow?
Present.
Commissioner Cralo?
Here.
With 6 members present, we do have quorum. So, as I indicated, and it's in your packet, the first item of business is the selection of the leadership of this joint body. The past practice has been the chair of the Infrastructure Committee chairs the meeting, and then typically the chair of the other body that comes together to create the joint body acts as the vice chair. And so I would recommend that we keep that rationale in place. That has seemed to work in the past. And so with that being said, I'm recommending that we have the chair be Alderman O'Brien and the vice chair be James Tolner. So my request this evening is for nomination of Chairman for Mike O'Brien to be chair.
I'll make that motion.
Excellent. So I heard a motion made by Commissioner Cralo.
Yes.
All right. And typically in aldermanic meetings, we follow Mason's rules, which no second is necessary. So I will just open it up to discussion. Hearing and seeing none. Calling for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It unanimously carries. So next would be the nomination of James Tolner as vice chair. If I could have such a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Excellent. So I heard Alderman Jetty making a motion for James Tolner to be vice chair. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. Calling for the vote. All those members that say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously carries. So congratulations to the both of you. So now that we have selected a chair, I'm going to hand it over to Alderman O'Brien. He will continue to lead this meeting. Past practice has been I've acted as a clerk of sorts. We don't need to continue with that practice if someone else would like to do it. But I have been in the role of just helping facilitate the meeting as the administrative staff to pass building projects. So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to continue on along with the agenda and talk a little bit about how we got to where we are now.
Okay, just briefly, while you mentioned yourself, we had worked together in doing the Board of Public Works building, and without any objection from members of the board, it was always comfortable to have Mr. Cummings sitting right within arm's length of me to help advise and everything else, and so therefore I welcome him into that seat, and if you will feel free to continue, you would be most welcome. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing any objections? Seeing none, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to skip around a little bit in the agenda and go to the PowerPoint presentation that I included, and we can get back to the business at hand, because I think it would help more so the infrastructure committee members to get a little bit of a context as to why we're here this evening, and talk a little bit about this quote-unquote building project. And so, with me this evening is Captain Brian Kenny. He and I have been working on this project for the last 6-9 months or so. And to give everyone a little bit of context and orientation, the goal this evening, besides the governance, is to set the table, so we're all kind of jumping off on the same footing. It was brought to my attention when the DPW office building was being constructed out on West Hollis Street that 9 Riverside, currently used as an office building for administration and engineering by the DPW, was contemplated to be turned over to the police for the idea of converting it into a police training facility. That has all occurred, and so now the idea would be is to try to bring it into a place where it can be used as a training facility. I'm going to pause my comments right there and ask Captain Kenny if there's anything in particular he would like to add.
Thank you, Tim. Very briefly, just to bring everybody up to speed, currently the police department has historically trained at 82 Pine Street Extension downtown, which was very beneficial to us. Not many cities and towns around us have a training-specific building, but at times it was a little difficult because it was on the other side of the city from the police department. So we're constantly packing things up, moving them downtown. It's in a section of town where security was always on our minds, with Mines Falls right there, homeless encampments, things like that, where there was constantly people outside of the training building while we were in it. So while it was a great facility, we did consistently have some concerns. Come late 2022, maybe, Tim, when this idea first came about, 9 Riverside just kind of fell into our lap when we learned that DPW was going to be moving. So it seemed to make sense to us that Pine Street Extension building is fairly dilapidated. It's an old elevator company. It certainly served its purpose, but it was dingy. We couldn't use the water. We could literally just use it to run hallways and kind of have makeshift classroom activities on a large screen TV, and that was basically it. So once we started thinking about the 9 Riverside building, I had some conversations with Tim. We talked about the benefits of having a training facility on the same property as the police department, so we're not moving across the city, moving around to other jurisdictions if we want to change a venue. The venue itself is better. We consistently train active shooter scenarios where something might occur in an office building, something might occur in a school. The 9 Riverside building, although not really fantastic for office space anymore, did offer us the office space type look, a school type look, where we could simulate long hallways with rooms on the sides of them to fine-tune those things that have never been more important than today. Upstairs, there's not the greatest condition, but the rooms are a little different. We can simulate maybe some apartment scenarios, things like that, things that Pine Street really just didn't afford us. So that's how the conversation started, and it just has been moving since then.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the committee, the first step was to do an assessment of the building. And so we have not done design on the building as of today. In fact, one of the items later on is I'm going to ask for your approval over a design proposal. But what we did do was work together to get an assessment of the building and to study the building to see how it could be used as a training / storage facility for the police department's benefit. And so in the spring of 2023, we studied all the major systems of the building: architectural, security, structural, plumbing, fire protection, mechanical, electrical, and fire alarm and site civil. And the assessment, I've provided it all to you. It's in the packet. I have hard copies here for you to look at as well. You can read it at your leisure. But it gives an indication as to the current status of the building. And the feedback that we got was it's a good building to use as a training facility. It might not be the best building to use anymore as an office building, but If you wanted to use it for training and educational purposes, this would be a good thing because it doesn't change the use of the building. And that's a key element that I want everyone to be aware of, because we are not changing the use of the building. And now you may say to me, well, what do you mean by changing the use of the building? It is from a building code perspective. From the building code's perspective, if the building is used a certain way, then we are only required to make certain type of changes, renovations, improvements. We are not required to make other more drastic or major type of improvements. So because we are keeping it consistent, and the change of use is not occurring, it really helps us in terms of saving on cost and budget for the municipality as a whole, and ultimately for the police department, so they can use this building as they see fit. So, Captain Kenny, could you outline the initial scope in terms of how you envision the building project to move forward?
Sure. As far as the scope goes, there's really 3 to 4 areas of concern. Obviously, this has never been a police building. It was the Department of Public Works, so it didn't have the security level of a police department. So first and foremost, everyone in the room knows, we're COI accredited, and that is a huge issue for us. So certain building security is run by city IT. We would want that ideally to be run by the police department. The key card access doors, those that are functioning, are run through City Hall. They're also a little bit antiquated. We have an antiquated system on our main building at the police department as well, which cannot be expanded upon. So we would need to put a new key card system to go in and out of doors and in and out of gates that can mesh with the one that we have now. And in order to do that, we need a little bit of work. We need to upgrade what we have at the main building to incorporate it into the new building. Otherwise, we have every member having multiple key cards in their pocket to get into different doors in different buildings, which can get a little bit messy. Secondly, we have a parking lot situation. As you all know, the parking lot of the police department is fenced in. It's not a great fence, it's old, it's been on our list to improve for a number of years. And in order to connect the two properties, we would need to remove a portion of that fence and extend the fence down Riverside to incorporate the rest of our new building. And with that, we would look to connect the two parking lots. As it sits right now, I either have to grab some gear, it's still better than Pine Street Extension, but I would have to grab some gear, unlock a gate, and walk across the property to get to the other building, or jump in a car and drive around the block to get to a building on the same property as the police department. So we would look to connect the two parking lots, not do a major parking lot revamp or anything like that, but there's a section of the parking lot where it was recommended, I think the vendor was VHB, Tim, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
That they thought was an ideal connection, looking at the grading and all that sort of thing. Thirdly, CCTV cameras. We don't currently, obviously we monitor our entire property. That part of the property is not monitored because it was never part of the police department property before. So that would be 2 to 4 additional CCTV cameras that need to be meshed in with our current system. And then lastly, we do have a need for a carport for some of the very expensive trucks that we have that are currently out in the weather. Not ideal to have them out in the weather with snow, things like that. So this will afford us a little bit of room to potentially, if project funds withstanding, potentially build a two vehicle carport on the side of the PD for that storage.
And full disclosure, I keep pushing this bullet in the sense that I'm very cognizant of the amount of money the city spends on vehicles. These particular vehicles that we have in the back of our mind are either $1 million or closely approaching $1 million. And so we really want to be good stewards of that. So if we could get them out of the elements a little bit, it would just extend the useful life. From an asset management standpoint, I really would recommend it. But again, this is above and beyond what the real true scope of 9 Riverside is per se. But I would recommend to you all, if we have the budget for it, it would be a priority, because I believe it will pay dividends in the long run. So Mr. Chairman, one more slide here, and then I'd open it up to questions. So what I'm about to say to you is speculative, take some assumptions into consideration, but wanted to paint a full picture for you. You know, ideally, we would be looking to shoot for construction in spring of summer of '24. That is predicated on us getting authorization for a bond, which, again, we would be looking to do that sometime in late winter, early spring of this year. The project has been before the CIP committee here, the CIC committee. It is in our CIP, and so that is often a question that gets asked. I just wanted to get it out onto the table right now so folks are aware that this isn't a new project. This project did not come about per se because you know, all of a sudden it appeared. This has been something that the police department has been endeavorous of over the years, and so it is in the CIP. The last bullet that I really want to kind of drill in on, and because I don't want you to hold me to it, is we're bogeying in on a $2.5 to $3 million project, but I will not make any representations to you on what the total project cost will be until we start getting into design. We have not started design. I have not heard from you all as to what your priorities may be. And so depending on how this conversation unfolds over the next few weeks or so, if we're so lucky to proceed, you know, this number may change. Alderman Dowd, if he was here right now, he would say something like, you know, the unknowns still need to be evaluated and understood. And so there's a lot of unknowns still to this project that we're going to have to do some due diligence on to be able to bring it forward. But when we were conceptualizing the project, we thought it would fit within this budget range. Lastly, the source of funds as of right now for the contracts that we would be looking to enter into would use our city's building trust fund. It would not be monies that come out of the police department, but monies that we escrowed during this past fall to set aside for this specific purpose. And so we wouldn't, so that's how we would be able to proceed. We wouldn't be cannibalizing anyone's operational budget per se, whether it's admin services or the police department. Mr. Chairman, I think this might be a good time now to open it up to questions or comments, if you'd so like.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. What I'll do is I'll start immediately to my right. So, Commissioner, do you have a question that,
I actually had several questions, but I want to
You may
start with
go.
one. To the police department, there's a section of the building that shows on the prints as being open two-story. What do you intend to utilize that portion of the building for?
A section of the building that shows,
That it's open, the first floor is open to the second floor, that it's like a two-story area?
the
Understood.
atrium
So we're-
section?
Yes.
so we're currently in that building, in that portion of the building already, and that's evidence storage. So that's not, the side of the building that faces the police department, we have overflow evidence storage in there currently. So this is the other part of the building, which is 2 floors. That is a one floor portion of the building. It's just a tall warehouse essentially. So that's occupied, if I understand your question correctly.
It is, but is that the best use of that area? Would that be something that, in light of the fact you're looking to build a carport, could garage bay doors be put in there and the vehicles stored in that area?
It's certainly something that we've talked about in the past. A project of that size, when we batted this around, would be quite a bit of money. And quite honestly, with an agency the size of ours, we need that amount of space for that evidence. We have all kinds of long-term homicide evidence dating back decades sitting in there that we needed at the time. I forget what year we went over there, Tom, I'm not sure if you remember. But we had completely outgrown the police department itself, and it was, getting to be an unhealthy situation. We needed that space. So without an alternative location, I would say that we would have to keep that warehouse for evidence, that side of the warehouse.
That makes sense. I just was trying to figure out a best use of
Sure.
such a large space and cost-effective versus building an outdoor carport.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. For now.
Commissioner?
I'm all set, sir.
Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So, we know from our involvement with the Board of Public Works that one of the reasons the Board of Public Works left that building, there were many reasons, but one of them was that the air quality was intolerable for their employees. And I looked at, I briefly looked at the preliminary report from the architect about the condition of this building, and I see that, I'm by no means an expert, but it looks like a hodgepodge of furnaces, different types of devices to try to either cool the air or heat the air and provide fresh air and try to deal with this air problem. So that's something that's going to have to be dealt with, I'm assuming. And I'm just thinking, the city has set as a goal, trying to wean ourselves away from fossil fuels. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity here, if we're going to be doing something to the HVAC system, whether there's an opportunity to change the source of how that air is treated, from gas to something else. And maybe there isn't one way, a way, but I would like it something that the architect looks at and could, I know whenever I talk about this, the first reaction I get is that it's too expensive, but, I think that's changing each year. These prices change, and the cost of doing it changes, and the value of doing it changes also. So I would like to put a request in that we have that as a possibility, that we look at the opportunity, see whether there's an opportunity to do that as we're dealing with that problem. And also that the city's energy manager be involved in this process.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Alderman Jettie, thank you for raising this issue. So, first and foremost, what I'm going to refer to as the MEPs, which is the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing, are satisfactory for the execution of a police training facility, according to our experts. Without question, the systems are old, they're beyond their useful life, and at some point, they will need to be replaced. And, but I just wanted to kind of put a finer point on, it doesn't necessarily need to be with this project. It could happen later on down the road. However, if the police department and this body so chooses to elect to do it sooner rather than later, we can absolutely do it. It's not currently contemplated under the existing scope as outlined by Captain Kenny. But obviously, if it was to be added in, this body could have a conversation as to whether you wanted to do it and then at what price point. I do believe that as we move forward, we would move forward with the mindset to be as energy efficient and sustainable as possible. That would be a guiding principle. And so I'll leave my comments there. I don't know if Captain Kenny has any thoughts that he'd like to add to this.
No, I think you hit it, Tim. We approached this with dollar signs in mind, and we were trying to get ourselves into the building in the most reasonable way possible without asking for things that might have been out of reach. So we're trying to at least have the building meet the standard in which we were training at the old building, but increase it a little bit so that it can be considered part of the main police property. And as far as air quality goes, obviously, you know, I'm aware of some of the concerns with the DPW building, and they had, you know, also dozens of people working in that building. I would just point out that we're not gonna be having people work in there full-time every day. So we did do the air quality study, which everyone can see, and certainly it reflects that it's healthy enough for us to be in it in that capacity, but we're not gonna be in there for 8-10-hour shifts like you might be in a regular office building.
Okay, thank you.
All set, Alderman Jettie?
Yes, ma'am.
Alderman Dowd has come, and welcome. What we're doing right now, so to bring you up to speed, Alderman Dowd, if anybody has any questions with Captain Kenny on the project, I can come back to you, let you get your, you know, feet wet a little bit, or do you have a particular question you would like to jump right in there? Feel
I think
free.
I'm well aware of the project and what it entails.
Okay, so you're all set, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you. Alderman Gaveva.
Not so much a question, just a comment. I do agree with Alderman Jettie on the air quality issue of that building. I know we heard time after time after time about the issues DPW is having in that building, so just want to make sure that is addressed if we're going to spend this type of money on it, that it's done correctly and done to the point where it wouldn't be an issue in the future.
Okay, Commissioner Toner?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but maybe, Tim, you could just take a second, because maybe the public's listening in, how we arrived at this point working with LaValle, Brunzinger, you know, because I'm sure that every time we're asked about this, I understand how we did myself.
Yep.
But for the public, you know, just to make sure, like people say, you know, did we go out to bid, did we find, you know, how did we find it, that type of thing, just to make sure it's clear for everybody in the public.
Yeah, absolutely, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
Again, when Brian and I when Captain Kenny and I started to work on this project, we very early on decided that it would be best to do a building assessment study. That is standard practice for us here in the city of Nashua as a jumping off point to understand basically what the value of our asset is and what it might cost us to replace in kind, build new. And so Captain and Kenny and I went out and issued an RFP through the city's procurement office. We issued it, I would say, a year or so ago, or thereabouts, maybe a little less than that, but about a year ago, because they did the study last spring. Spring of 23, and we only had one response, and we sent it out to the entire market. We have a list of vendors that we typically work with, but LaValle, Bresinger were the only ones to respond to it, and so they executed on that contract, which admin services paid the cost for that building assessment. Off the top of my head, I believe it was around $60,000, give or take. And that is what helped inform some of this prior work or prior conversation that has led us to where we are today.
Alderman Dowd.
I can just advise, working with all the school projects, that small projects right now are hard to get people to bid on because the companies are so busy with work that they just can't take on anymore. Sometimes you have to really stretch to get someone to come on board, especially a highly qualified person.
Thank you. Yeah. I do have a couple questions, you know. Number one, for the taxpayers that are listening at home, what's our target life expectancy of this building? How, you know, because I particularly love building something that's going to help a particular division thrive, to make their work more efficient. So what are we kind of looking at? You know, a 20-year lifespan plus, or, you know, I'm not going to hold you to the exact number, but this is going to have some longevity to it, correct?
I would say for sure, Mr. Chair, The assessment done on the building does suggest that the building is in fair condition. It's not pristine, but nor do we need it to be pristine to conduct the activities we're looking to do. But the general condition of it is certainly up to the standards which we need it to be, and we have every intention of being there for a while. To go back to the MEPs, that will be something that within 10 years we're going to have to deal with. On an individual basis, we list out all the air conditioning units, the heating units, all in very workable condition, but towards the end of their life.
Yeah.
So within 5 years, some of these are going to probably have to be dealt with in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and that's understandable when you have an old building like that.
Yes, sir.
I do have one more additional question. Right now, I think the structure is being chaired by the cable TV division, and will they still remain there and independent of your operation?
Yes, sir. So the transit is on the other side of the hallway, and
Yeah.
cable TV as well. We're conducting training in there as we speak, and we cohabitate the building without a problem thus far. So we try to be cognizant of the fact that we're doing some noisy training, try to limit that to different sides of the building and to be the best neighbors that we can. We have a relationship with the folks over at Transit, just with how this project came to be. They have my phone number. We don't have any complaints that we're being too noisy or anything like that. So the one little wrinkle as far as our neighbors go is we have the IT closet right in the middle of our hallway. So that is something long-term that we would look to move out of there.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Every time someone needs to service the phones or service the servers, if we were in training, we would have to halt it and escort that person in, because at the point in which it becomes a secure police training site, you know, a repairman, for lack of a better word, can't just walk in to fix something. It has to be escorted in, and every time someone gets escorted in.
Okay,
So-
and that leads me into something else. Director Cummings is probably going to kick my ankles under the desk here. But to help you do this, and it might be an opportunity for the cable TV through their bonding, Transit through their bonding, and looking, so I don't know if there's been an outreach to try to get the three different entities working as one, to try to have this as, you know, a very good megaplex, so to speak, you know?
So if I may, on that point, Mr. Chairman, we've started some conversations with Cable Access. I believe Cable Access would like to maybe look elsewhere, not necessarily 9 Riverside per se, but when the time comes, maybe look to come more down to the downtown area here, or at least that's what the preliminary conversations have been like. And so, you know, we're still very much in the early stages of that. But I think, in full disclosure, if we could work to actually move the other 2 business units that the city has out of 9 Riverside, that probably would be the best stewardship for that asset in the long run, due to the sensitivity and the security considerations and the credentialing necessary that the police department needs to maintain. I was actually surprised. I was able to walk through that building with them a week or so ago, and I was actually, I felt kind of special that I got to see a little of the behind-the-scenes stuff that I didn't think I would ever have access to. Understandably so, because of the sensitive nature of what they need to train for, and we don't want folks to know about those things.
You are sworn to secrecy.
I think that's fair to say. But, Mr. Chairman, also going back to the prior comments, so the building is fair and is in fair condition. I think that's an accurate way to describe it. But a building is made up of many different systems. And so our current scope doesn't necessarily contemplate, because again, we were keeping the idea of the cost at a certain price point and wanting to just bring it to a level that the police department feels it is going to be usable and productive to meet their vision and their mission. But if we were to expand that scope to take in other things like consideration, like the roof, the MEPs were touched upon, fire protection, all those things will need to be addressed. They don't need to be addressed now per se, but would be part of your deferred capital maintenance plan, and should be part of one's deferred capital maintenance plan And as a rule of thumb, I like to believe that we design buildings to last 30 to 50 years here in the city, and this would have no deviation from that principle. Mr. Chairman, if we don't have any other questions or comments?
I just want to seek that, if I may, Director Cummings. Everybody satisfied? No additional questions? Commissioner Toner?
Yeah, just one follow-up. So the work that LaValle's doing, you brought up some good points about the roof and some of the other things. During this process, will they be able to provide us information, say, hey, we think you're gonna need a roof in 5 years, you think you're gonna need a heating unit in 3, and then that way we can work together with the city and the police department and budget some of those things as you mentioned. So is that part of this process as well?
Yes, we've already started that, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you may.
We've already started that, and of course, we can embellish it and get better information for you.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, we just did a roof analysis on the 2 elementary schools. What they do is they drill a core into the roof and see what the condition is of what's underneath and make a recommendation as to what should be done and when.
Okay. Seeing no more questions, Director Cummings, can you take us into the next topic?
Yes, thank you. So, again, I outlined a little bit of how I conceive the project moving forward. One of those elements is developing a working group, a small working group to help work with the construction management team. Again, I'm not exactly sure whether these would be weekly or bi-weekly meetings, but what I do know is this body will need to meet at least monthly. And so in between that monthly meeting, what has worked best for us in the past is that a small group gets together to help move this project along. And again, I can't say right now until we start design and we start actually having conversations with a construction manager whether this would be weekly meetings. I have a feeling it probably would be. But at the very least, it'd probably be meetings every other week. And again, it's to keep the project on schedule and on budget. That's the main thought process to it. So what I would ask is that we formulate a 3-member working group where it would be what I'm suggesting, the chair and the vice chair of infrastructure and then the chair of the police commissioners. To come together for this working group to help advise the project as we proceed. With that being said, before you take any action, what we typically have is some rules of operation. They're like, if you will, bylaws that kind of govern the governance of this committee and specifically the working group. And so that is outlined in your packet. And first and foremost, the Joint Committee on Infrastructure and Police Commissioners has the final sign-off on the design, any altering or remodeling. So one of the things that will be necessary, and this is more housekeeping in nature, is I, at some point, am going to ask Captain Kenny to get an official vote of the police commissioners on the plan. And then that plan is what actually will feed into the design. And it's a nuanced point, but then this body takes over jurisdiction on the design. And so once we get the design underway, this body oversees both the design and the construction of the assets. So from there, the Joint Committee on Infrastructure and Police Commissioners, when it comes to all financial aspects of the projects, would be the approving entity. So lots of times you may have heard in the past about going to Finance Committee. This body actually does the approvals. You would not necessarily go to Finance Committee. That's something that I want to make sure folks understand. So all contracts would need to come back before you for approval. Second, and it goes hand in glove, is relative to requisitions in the invoicing process. So once a requisition with all the backup is presented for approval, it would be signed off on by the architect, the construction manager, the working group that would be formulated that I just spoke of, and then it would go before this body for final sign-off. And so that would need to occur before any payments are issued to any of our vendors or contractors. That may mean, and I just want to be on the record saying this so folks have a clear calibration, that may mean by the time we get the invoice, and it's one of the biggest reasons why this body needs to meet monthly, is because there might be a 4 to 6 week lag before we actually issue payment, because we won't issue payment until this body convenes. It's also one of the biggest reasons why we need to have quorum. So I wanted to point that out. All contracts, all invoices would be approved by this body. Now, with that being said, past practice has been, and this happens at joint special, and it's happened with the DPW building, this body has come together and has delegated, particularly because of time constraints, that the chair of the committee, due to timeliness issues, can have authorization on change orders of up to $50,000, conditioned upon the fact that a report come back to you at the next following meeting explaining why such change was necessary. I've included that in as well as part of your standard operating procedures. I say this to you before we proceed because I want to make sure everyone is clear in terms of the ground rules that we would be working by, and I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with that. And I want to be clear, those changes that I just discussed, those changes would be construction changes. Any design related changes that would be necessary have always come back to this full body for approval.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, just a couple things in that regard. I have that authority for the Joint Special School Building Committee. It's only used to prevent additional expenses, like if you slow down the contractors, because something needs to be approved, you can't wait a month for that approval because you'll lose the contractor. They'll go somewhere else. Plus, it'll cost more for the project. So it's taken very seriously before that approval is granted. The other thing is that PCOs, which is prospective change orders, any change to the design would come back to this committee for approval. So design changes, as far as additions or even deletions, which we have occasionally, must come back to this committee for approval.
Okay. I just have one thing to add. For those thinking that want to get onto the working group, I'm pretty sure it's going to mirror what we did with the Board of Public Works building. And so, just so that you understand, these will probably be on-site meetings with the contractor, not here in the chamber, but it would be on-site, so he can make the presentation, and it's basically the things. We'll get to see the police chief trying to make the decision between color swats on which color the bathroom should be. Should be enjoyable to watch that. But anyways, it's got to be a little bit technical like that. So, what do you anticipate, twice a month or something like that? So they're very important to be there and to come up. And then the report, well, it's not really a written report, but a verbal report. It gets rehashed again. And I think as we go on, the contractor will start showing up to these particular meetings. So the dual board will be able to ask the contractor. He'll make the presentation, and you're able to ask him at that particular time some of the questions that are going on with the construction. So just so they understand what we're asking with the small working group.
So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I'm making a recommendation that the chair and vice chair of infrastructure, that would be Alderman O'Brien and Alderman Dowd, and then the chair of the police commissioners, which I believe is Chairman Tolner, be appointed as the working group members.
Yes, Alderman, excuse me, former Alderman, but Commissioner Tolman.
Just trying to bring you back.
If there was another member of the infrastructure committee that wanted to join, would that be an issue or anything like that, or no?
All meetings are open to all the committee members. You know, what are you talking about, the small working group?
Right.
Meetings. These are more basically nuts and bolts, I think. And I think have the whole board there, the reason not, it's kind of, I wouldn't say tedious, because it's very important.
If
You
I
want-
may,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Chairman, so whether it's another infrastructure committee member or another member of the police commissioners.
Can't be
more
a
than
member of
4.
the- Yeah, can't be 4?
This body of 8
Okay.
can't trigger
Yeah, I know it
quorum.
couldn't be another police commissioner, because then we'd have a quorum. So
Correct.
Right.
So,
As much as they would want to be on it, I'm sure, but, okay. All right.
Yeah, that is where you're going, thank you.
yep.
Okay, so we have people in nomination, is that what you're seeking next?
Yeah, I provided a recommendation and I would ask for a motion.
Okay, there's a recommendation with the names of Chairman Michael O'Brien, and then also the Vice Chair of the Committee of Infrastructure, Richard Dowd, Commissioner Toner, and, did I?
That's it?
That's it. Any objections? Seeing no objections, I'll call for the vote. No objections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. And so, the last bit of it is just some housekeeping. First, I'd ask that you officially adopt these rules of what I'm calling as rules of operations for this joint committee. It's as I described in your memo, in your meeting packet. It is just the governance that would empower the chair in particular to make some decisions.
I'll make that motion.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then finally, Mr. Chairman, just some administrative matters. I'm hoping that this body will indulge me for a moment. I'm hoping that this joint meeting can come together before the Committee on Infrastructure at once a month around this 6 p.m. timeframe. We try to keep these meetings to about an hour, but it would be here in the Aldermanic chamber. These full board meetings are subject to RSA 91A and subject to the right to know law, so notice will be provided. Minutes, as of right now, unless I hear otherwise, the minutes, although technically not required to be verbatim, can be, so long as we do it in the chamber, kept verbatim. And that's how I'll proceed. Working group type sessions, there should be no expectation that those minutes would be quote-unquote verbatim. They would be more along the lines of memorializing different things that occurred during the meeting, just from really a construction manager's perspective. Staffing, I will be the official staff to the committee, though I will be doing it with the police department in tandem, and Captain Kenny is here. And Captain, there may be a change. Do you want to speak a little bit about that, or?
As far as the personnel at the police department?
Possibly going forward, just so the joint committee won't be getting together again probably until the end of January.
I would suspect I'll be on the project through the new year, and I have to hear back from the chief on whether he's gonna have, myself and Captain Volton working on it, or perhaps another captain chiming in on it, but there will be some consistency. I just can't speak definitively whether I'll be on the project long-term or not.
You will have me, and I'll be here, so I'll be a staple throughout this endeavor. All of what I'm talking about is conditioned upon an approval of a bond authorization, though we're working towards as though we will. And so you can anticipate these meetings happening monthly as we move forward. I believe I have covered all my administrative business, Mr. Chairman, so I believe there's no other business at hand, so unless there's other comments and whatnot that the joint body has, you'd be in good stead to conclude the meeting. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Yes,
I just want to
Commissioner.
make one thing clear. Are we going to meet on Wednesdays? Is that set in concrete?
I believe the standard meeting for the Committee on Infrastructure is Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. I believe the fourth Wednesday is typically.
Okay, that helps to know that. I will do my best. I am not going to be able to make every fourth Wednesday.
Yeah. Well, as much as you can, we all
Oh,
have,
definitely.
we realize we all have a life. Also, to members of the public and to the police commissioner, if you went to the municipal calendar of meetings, it is posted of when all pneumatic meetings and commissions, committee meetings and stuff like that. So basically, it is posted online, so hopefully you should be able to get access to that. We can see through Director Cummings, maybe we can have a reach out, just FYI, maybe we can work on that.
No problem.
Particularly in the beginning, once we get started, I think everybody will get mostly used to it. Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, this probably doesn't need to be said, but Director Cummings, when the contract is ready, is presented from the architect and the construction manager, they do have to be reviewed by legal.
Actually, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually forgot about this, so I appreciate Alderman Dowd bringing this up. In your packet, you actually do have a proposal. So if the body is so inclined to move forward with a recommendation, I'd ask actually for an official vote on the architect's contract in particular. And to answer Alderman Dowd's question, we will be using the city standard professional services contract that's already been vetted. So this would be just attached to it. But it would be good if we could get the architect going on this project for what is outlined to be $99,131, though that does not have a contingency to it. So I'm asking for a 10% contingency to be added to this. So just to make the numbers simple, I would ask for a recommendation of $113,000 when you include their expenses for design of this training facility.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, before we can authorize hiring a contract and obligating money, we have to have that money. Where's the money coming from? Is it coming from a prospective bond? And if so, that has to be approved first. You might want to ask the treasurer.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Alderman Dowd, before you got here this evening, I had covered that this monies would be coming from the building trust fund. We had escrowed the money, so we are in good stead.
Okay, all set.
Okay, Commissioner Tolman.
Yeah, just one question, on the 113 or whatever it is, so it would be not to exceed, right?
Correct.
Okay, fine, just want to make sure.
Okay. Further questions? All right, Commissioner Tolman, do I have a motion to approve?
Yes, you do.
For $113,000 to get us started
Any
off?
cents on that? Any 63 cents or anything like that? Okay. All right.
You could add a penny if you wish, sir. Okay. All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's one other proposal that's, again, would use the city standard professional services contract. This is for an owner's project manager. The source of funds, again, would be the city's building trust fund. We had escrowed this funding. This would be a consultant to work hand in glove with us to bring the project forward, and that's for $24,898. I'd ask for your approval of that so we can move this along as well.
Looking for a motion? Alderman Dowd,
So
you're making the motion for approving of $24,898.48.
So moved.
So moved. All right, any discussion on the motion? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, just for clarification, so when Alderman Dowd said that, this should go to legal to be approved, you're saying that we're using some standard form and we're attaching this. Legal doesn't need to see what we're attaching to it,
No,
and they wouldn't want to?
no. Standard practice is, Mr. Alderman Jettie, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is that we attach exhibits always to the standard contract. And they don't typically, unless we ask or want, but this is pretty standard. It just gets into the hours and rates.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, that contract's already been reviewed by legal. We've used it occasionally, and it's been thoroughly vetted by legal.
Yeah. If I
Okay,
could
so,
respond, I understand that the standard contract has been reviewed extensively, but what we're adding to it, to my knowledge, has not been, and I was just wondering if it needed to be. And I'm being told no.
I don't believe so.
Okay, we have a pending motion before us by Alderman Dow to approve the cost of $24,898.45. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just to kind of circle back on one outstanding item, just to close the loop on it, if it's the desire of this body, I believe Captain Kenny and I can speak to the design team and start to understand what it would look like to get a quote for a studying of the MEP systems, as I believe I heard that that is of interest to the committee. I don't need a per se a motion to direct us to do that, but I wanted to just make sure that that was on the record, that if that we were going to look to do that. If there's any major concern or angst around that, please let me know. But, you know, I heard the comments tonight, and so we'll be happy to get some more additional information on that.
Okay. Any other further comments by members of the committee? Commissioner Toler.
Yeah, a copy of this, will that go to the full Board of Aldermen? I mean, they're aware that we're gonna be working on this project, and they're somewhat familiar with it. I just wanna make sure that as we move along, and it comes time for a vote, that we're not bringing them from point A to point Z and, you know, a meeting or two.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd be happy to, the first couple PowerPoint slides of this packet, put as a separate communication to the Board of Aldermen to give them a high-level overview of what we've started to work on.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea
Yeah.
for the,
And we'll look forward to that.
okay.
Additional comments? Okay, and seeing none, Alderman Dow, do you have another motion?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much.